Welcome back, everyone. So, Denuvo. We hear about the darn thing all the time, usually in the context of it making a game worse in terms of performance, and then developers being pressured to remove it. That then makes many of us wonder, why the hell do they even bother with Denuvo? So today, we are going to basically go through the Denuvo situation. Is it actually worth using for developers? What's overall going on? How much does it cost to put Denuvo in your game? And does it actually impact performance? Because we have a few notable examples, including statements from people working within the games industry on games, talking about Denuvo as a part of their games and the issues that it's caused. So, what is even Denuvo for? What does it do? Basically, right, it is security software. Games use it to prevent piracy and illegal downloads and activations. It is installed with both user-level and kernel-level security permissions, so it's going in decently deep. And it constantly reads your computer, basically while monitoring the game for any changes or mods. And of course, this is all operations that have got to be done on your computer, and that means it will take up some resources. That basically is it. We could go a lot deeper, but I don't think that is particularly relevant because for people, it's the results that matter. So, the cost of Denuvo. Well, Denuvo implementation costs so much in terms of player sentiment and reputational impact. We all know that. You hear Denuvo, you think bad. But how much does it literally cost to install this middleware in your game, to try to have less piracy take place? Well, it's obviously pretty damn hard to work out how much Denuvo actually costs. They don't just go and tell us. You can't view pricing on their site. But we do have leaked Crytek documents that give us some insight. So, courtesy to the very subtly named DRM on Reddit. So, Crytek reportedly paid €140,000 to add Denuvo to Crysis Remastered for 12 months. Then, it's $2,000 per month for like after that. That is basically how much it costs. Then there's an additional €10,000 for every storefront the game is released on, plus €60,000 if the game receives 500,000 unique activations within 30 days. Which is basically the, if you do really well, we want more money bit of it. So that's basically how much Denuvo costs. It's not massive as compared to the budget of these games, but it is decently pricey. So, if the Crysis Remaster is selling for €30 on the Epic Games Store, which it is, then, based on that €140,000 number, Crytek would need to sell 5,000 more copies to offset the cost of the Denuvo integration. But of course, if you add in the 12% cut of Epic, that's 5,700 copies of the game, and who knows if there are any other, middleware cuts and things like that, or just other fees that are going on. So, that's basically that, but of course, it would be more expensive if the game was, too successful and sold super well. So basically, the straight upfront cost is that, and you would need to get 5,700-ish sales to make up for that. Now, there are some other pricing details here. This is looking back at the 2016 stuff. AAA title that's bigger than 500k units is 100 grand. AA, so smaller than 500k in PC, is 50k. An indie title less than 100k units, 10 grand. And then there's just some other fees there as well. But of course, that's not the real cost of Denuvo, is it? So let's talk about performance issues and reputational damage, because player sentiment is really the issue here. So Denuvo is not just added to it's not just slapped on at the end, right? You don't just click a few buttons and turn on Denuvo. No. Denuvo is basically deeply integrated into the game during the development process. That means that it doesn't function as a separate background process. It's not like you can just open up, your program manager and find a process called Denuvo. That ain't happening. It's integrated within the game. So there's really not much of a way to get past Denuvo, unless, of course, somebody has cracked the game. In which case, you get a Devil May Cry situation where the cracked version in PC runs better than the version you paid for. That's not good. Now, Tech Power Up, I've got a great explanation of how it all works if you want to go and take a look at that. And Overlord Gaming on YouTube did a huge amount of testing a few years back, and basically to this day, it is just an awesome piece of work. They tested on Dishonored, Dishonored 2, Bulletstorm, Deus Ex Human Revolution, Rime, and Motor Racer 4. And, well, these games were tested with Denuvo on and off. Loading times were 50 to 80% longer with Denuvo on. And Rime was a good choice because it had really bad launch performance. And Overlord confirmed a 50 to 60% improvement in both areas when Denuvo was removed. So that was pretty damn big. Now, Denuvo Software Solutions have said that the software does not cause issues, which does seem to fly in the face of things. Now, it could be a situation where they can say that they don't inherently cause issues. It's the developer's implementation of our technology that causes the issue. But for an end user, all that means is Denuvo, their game, probably bad or worse for it. So it's the sort of thing where theoretically you could say there's not much wrong if Denuvo is functioning correctly, as Denuvo seemingly say that it does, but in the real world it doesn't. So the real world's the one that matters, not the one that you can, sell to people in a pitch, Denuvo software company. And, just normal things like, apparently, the possible SSD degradation because of all of the ops, all of the file ops going on.
I think that's largely been debunked, as in there's no solid evidence for it, but I mean players have reported, so it's debunked, but yeah.
Increased CPU usage, that's hardly surprising given what Denuvo is actually doing.
Yep.
And it's the sort of thing where it's just extremely hard to prove the whole thing blanket, because I think there are games that ship with Denuvo and there's no serious problem.
Yeah.
But there are notable games that do have problems.
Yeah, I mean, for a little bit of flavor on that before we get into specific examples, a lot of it is about about the integration stage, what developers actually get, what instructions in the code base Denuvo actually obfuscates or is marked for high performance, low performance. That's one of the things that explains the lot longer loading times, is because those are one and done things, but they're also key. So Denuvo can take, they mark the loading process as this isn't critical to frame rate, this isn't critical to, frame timings. So that's where Denuvo will do a lot of work in those places. And the work it does in those places is important to keeping the game unrunnable, because you just can't remove that. So you need Denuvo to literally load the game. But that's where that kind of comes from. And you can see how it's down to, if a developer doesn't do, say the Rime developers, for example, if they don't have the most time in the world to sit down and go, okay, well, we can offset most of this into loading. We can, not obfuscate specific instructions that are important. Maybe they get it wrong. Maybe they don't have time to do it properly. You can see that. But, that adds another layer of trust to the developer in terms of Denuvo, where you go, well, it's got Denuvo. Do I trust, especially for indie games and stuff, do I trust them to have the resources to sit down and go, how can we minimize performance impact of Denuvo? Or because Denuvo aren't going to give them much time because they're only a 10 grand value for an indie company, go, whatever happens. Let's not worry about it. So I think that's
this is something we've never experienced because we've, not integrated Denuvo into anything.
Yep.
But what happens when you open the profiler in Unity and, you see what is causing my frame timings? What is going on? I wonder how Denuvo actually appears there. Is it, because it's the sort of thing whenever you open the profiler in Unity, there's some problems which are going to be extremely, extremely obvious the second you open the profiler, and you actually get to see how much time it's actually taking and resources actually taking to do things. But there are things that do require a lot more sleuthing and poking about to actually, really work out what the performance hit is. So hard to exactly know without having any experience with Denuvo, and certainly I'd rather not end up in a position where any of us have any experience with Denuvo, because it doesn't really seem like it's something super worth doing.
Yeah, and just as a little bit of tease for where we're going to go with this, it seems like the industry is largely learning that lesson. It's taken a while, but it seems like specifically Square Enix are starting to figure something out there.
Yeah. So to go into some examples, this was an interesting one. Tekken 7's director-producer noted that certain moves would tank PC performance because of Denuvo. Problem occurred in Tekken 7 for PC. That's the frame rate drops when hits such as Akuma's Hadouken.
Shakinet's Hadouken.
There we go. Since it's not a problem of graphics and CPU processing, it will not solve even if changing PC setting. Problem with encryption program. Will fix soon. Sorry, please wait. Somebody's like, encryption program? He says back, Anti-Tamper third-party middleware. It's live updating programs, and I hear it's fixed soon from them, and they'll update. There you go. Denuvo. Sonic Mania needed a constant internet connection at launch and didn't mention Denuvo on its store page. Devil May Cry was in its funny position that we've talked about a few times, where because of a Steam hiccup, 2 versions of the game, both with and without Denuvo, were accessible for a short period of time, and surprise, surprise, the version without Denuvo ran about 25% better than the one with Denuvo, and Capcom officially removed Denuvo from the game about a year after launch. Capcom used Denuvo quite a bit, but that actually has also meant that they've removed it from a fair few games like Resi 2 Remake and Resi 7. Then also Doom Eternal.
Yeah, that was specifically the introduction of the Denuvo anti-cheat versus Denuvo anti-tamper, which is technically a different situation, but it's still it kind of gets to the point where players hear Denuvo and go, no, we don't want that.
A different product, same company.
Yeah, same with the idea of the Valorant anti-cheat, where it's like, here's a really intrusive anti-cheat that we're basically smuggling into your game, and people are like, no, we value our PCs and the privacy we have there, so we don't want to mess with that. And it's just a case of, people hear Denuvo, go, no, get rid of it, get that gone. And ultimately, in this case, then, it actually backtracked really quickly.
Yeah.
Because, when consumers do combine their power in a way that actually makes sense, you can see it happening. Because that was a substantial amount of uproar, and it was strong enough that it actually got the executive producer to say, listen, we understand, here's what we're going to talk about. Which I think is, very nice. I don't think there's much worth, because it's, anti-cheat, not anti-tamper. I don't know if there's much worth going to do a statement on, but it is just, it's important enough to players that now developers have to go, listen, here's what the crack is. Here's what we're doing, which I think is a very good sign.
Yeah, because you don't want a situation where basically whenever it gets cracked, your game ends up being better. And people are going to want to, even if they've purchased the game, they'll have an incentive to pirate a copy if they want that additional performance. Now, what perhaps inspired this video into existence is a few of the notable Denuvo things. So, Life is Strange True Colors, that released on the 14th, and it removed Denuvo 4 days later. So, there's that. Yeah, so there's that. For Humankind, well, the developer actively cited performance impact when they talked about removing Denuvo. Then for Resident Evil Village, Village initially implemented Denuvo protection alongside their own DRM, so anti-piracy layer, but this caused issues, and Capcom issued a patch to try to smooth things out. So it's pretty rough if you are Denuvo and Humankind removes it before launch, and Life is Strange True Colors removes it days after launch.
Yeah, and it's a case where obviously, you pay for the 12 months that was in the Crytek documentation. That's why so many other games just go, the next update after the 12 months has passed removes it. And that's happened to a bunch of Square Enix games. Another example here is actually Mass Effect Legendary Edition was removed after 1 month. Which, I don't imagine that Denuvo want you or give you the option to pay for 1 month. And I imagine Mass Effect Legendary Edition was squarely in that AAA category. But, at that point, you have to wonder, why is EA happy to spend what could have been upwards of €100,000, or whatever the equivalent in dollars is, to remove it after 1 month? And you really have to consider, the actual mechanics of that. Because, obviously, I didn't see much in the way of performance stuff there. But then Mass Effect Legendary Edition is, a remaster, so it wouldn't have suffered in the same way.
You could take 20% off it, and for a lot of people, they wouldn't notice.
Yeah, versus the idea of Humankind, where they literally were like, the performance impact in the beta is too much. We're getting rid of this.
Yeah, which is interesting to me, because a game like Humankind, there could be a bit more CPU load there, and if Denuvo is particularly hard on CPU, then you could see it impacting a game like that. Or maybe even Devil May Cry 5, is that a case where that game is running at such high frame rates that a CPU bottleneck is more likely, and therefore if Denuvo's on CPU more, that could be your issue. I mean,
possibly one of the things with the DMC5 comparison is that, like we found out later with Resident Evil Village having some substantially more testing done to it, it turned out to be the Capcom DRM stuff was more of a problem. So I wonder if that was possibly the same for Devil May Cry 5, where it was, a little bit of two DRM solutions caused the problem, and they're maybe stepping on each other's toes, or maybe just the implementation was quite poor. Because I think that's one of the things that, for a little bit of flavor on the humankind stuff, in the interview they talk about how, or in general to the not the interview, but when they were talking about it in general, they were saying, when left with a choice between delay the game to optimize the Denuvo implementation to make sure that it had as minimal impact, or just go, nah, we'll just accept whatever piracy hits us at the start. They opted for the latter.
Yeah.
Which is insane. I mean, literally, they do talk about, if Denuvo can hold off a cracked version, even for a few days, that can help us protect our launch. And that's the overall point of Denuvo. Actually, I mean, apparently that's how they even pitch. They go, we'll protect you for a couple of days, and that's it. That's all you really. That's all you really need.
That's what launch days of games are like.
Yeah. So that's the fun thing. I feel like we're definitely getting to a place where it's getting faster and faster.
Yeah.
Life is Strange, 4 days. EA's Mass Effect, a month. Which ultimately has you have to wonder, is Denuvo really going to be down to the point where you implement it for a week? You wreck the performance of your game for a week because you don't want to spend time optimizing it if you're going to remove it anyway? And then where does the consumer sit on this? Because obviously, why would you buy any of these games at launch if you're expecting performance issues on PC? From a purely consumer standpoint, Denuvo is directly, I mean, everyone's always felt this way, but now it seems even more apparent. It seems even more obvious that it's there to protect the first couple of days. They're just going, no, consumers the first days can take a hit, or for the first year, or for the first couple of months, whatever they plan, because we need to protect ourselves from this. And it's annoying that paying customers have to take the brunt of this stuff. Because I know Resident Evil Village was really poor performance-wise on PC at the start. And I think PC gamers are in the right mind to, if we can temper the fact that Denuvo is always immediately a bad thing and people review bomb just for Denuvo, which is sort of fair. But I think that it's a fun case of the pressure taking time to manifest, but the pressure from PC gamers has suddenly, or like over time, gotten bigger and bigger than the perceived benefits of Denuvo, and that's why it's getting wrecked immediately. And I think that's a kind of a hopeful story overall. At least I think so. Anyway.
Yeah. The final thing to say is it's not always Denuvo. There's the recent thing with Deathloop where basically Alexander of Digital Foundry didn't see things that were indicating it was Denuvo, and then Dark Side of Gaming did extensive testing and found that from what could be ascertained, does not seem like it's a Denuvo issue. It seems like it is another issue. Lenny Reviews also said that it's not an issue with Denuvo. There's something else for that game, which obviously a lot of people are going to find hard to believe, because I think it was Dishonored 2 that did not have a great Denuvo experience.
Yep.
But it turns out, they can be that for Dishonored 2, and perhaps with this game, with Deathloop, it is another performance issue, but it's not necessarily Denuvo. But ultimately, that even the name is such a lightning rod. Mm-hmm. There's just some thinking that should be done there on the part of devs, and I just generally wonder, what do we do for anti-cheat? Because at the end of the day, piracy sucks for a developer. Like, if a developer is putting out a quality product, it's worth the money they're asking for, and it's, the service is good, such as on Steam or really any of the stores. Like, if you buy Game and GOG, you're going to get a pretty good service too, with Galaxy 2 being such a really great client.
Yep.
So what do we do? Do we just sort of put games out and hope for the best, where it might be very easy to pirate them? What can be done? I don't really know much about the cracking scene, to be completely honest with you. It seems to me that simple things that a developer can just implement themselves without going to a solution like Denuvo are likely very easy to crack. So perhaps that's why Denuvo ends up existing, but then is that a bigger weapon that needs to be brought to the table that has too many downsides for the consumers who never would have considered pirating in the first place, so why do they then get punished because somebody else might?
Yeah, that's always the fun thing that I love comparing it to Steam, because Steam DRM, as far as pirates are concerned, doesn't exist. You know, you can, like, everyone in the world knows how to crack that. Anyone who wants to can just do it. It is really, really exceptionally simple, no matter what Steam do. But clearly, that's not where their efforts go. And this is what I think is important. That's not where their efforts go. One of the reasons you'll want to buy a game on Steam is for all of the additional efforts, all the additional services attached to it. Because honestly, a lot of the time, if you download a game from Steam, you'll download it faster than if you pirated it. You'll have it there all the time. You'll have it across stuff. You'll have all of those great features attached. And that's just why that's worked so well for people.
There was even literally a time where, because the PS4 download speeds, and it's so funny comparing my PS4 to my PS5, where Deathloop for me downloaded in 7 minutes. There was times where I could have done a thing, maybe like a new game in my PS4 Pro. I'm like, that's going to take 700 years to download. I'm just going to do this thing instead. Purely just because of the time component. And I mean, look, I should just download the thing in advance. It's a pretty stupid excuse, but it just does show how reliably maxing out your internet for the download speed of something is actually pretty nice if you're a customer. Not great if you don't have great internet, but I mean, at least thankfully our download speeds in Belfast are pretty good.
Yeah, it's just that thing of, I think it is time for, I mean, obviously they're going to be doing this a little bit, but I think it's nice to see that Denuvo is finally being kind of, it's been kicked hard enough and so many times that it's starting to lose a lot of relevance. And I think that as pressure builds up, especially with like it being widely reported on, and there being people like Overlord and like Extreme Tech actually going out of their way to investigate in the consumer advocacy kind of way. Because I'm sure game developers do their own internal investigations, but are kind of stuck with it, because I imagine, you know, for the people working at Capcom on Monster Hunter World, on Resident Evil Village, and on, you know, Devil May Cry 5, that's going to be the case of the man from the top says, we don't want piracy, here's an anti-piracy solution that I've been sold by a very nice man who said it would save us loads of money, please implement it. And the dev's like, I don't really have time for this shit, but we'll get it done anyway.
Yeah, it's my job to do what you're saying, so I'll do it. And it doesn't get properly done.
Yeah, so it'll be fun to see what the next stage is. I just hope it is, you know, very much more in the, I don't know how long ago Gabe Newell said it, piracy is a service problem. It is, don't punish your customers for buying your game. Figure out something that will reward them for buying the game a little bit better. I think that's the way forward. And also, don't make it always online either. Thanks. So I think that's
pretty much it. So there you go, Denuvo. Maybe it's on the way out.
Yeah. What's the point of Denuvo? To save piracy for 2 or 3 days. So let's start removing it 2 or 3 days in. Sweet.
Yeah, pretty much so. Thanks for listening. Let us know what your experience is with the lovely thing that is Denuvo, what they've been. We'll see you next time.